The frosty bear roared, scratched off the bolt in its leg, and snapped it. Han Sen's heart died a little when he watched the bear do that. It meant that he only had 6 bolts left. The frosty bear forsook its pursuit of Wang Yuhang and turned its attention to Han Sen. Its eyes were full of anger, and it desired nothing more than to brutally murder the person who had just dealt it minor harm. Han Sen then summoned his flaming Rex spike. As the bear leapt towards him, he cast his toxic dragon drill. The 2-meter-long sharp weapon spun like a tornado and drilled into the bear's chest. The hide of its front chest was torn open by the ravenous Rex spike. Although the wound wasn't too deep, blood was drawn by the whirling blade. The flames singed the fur, too, lighting the borders of the wound like a ring of fire. This result made Han Sen's heart so happy. He felt confident in pushing even further, driving the weapon in deeper. The frosty bear's paws, however, slapped the flaming Rex spike. Dong! Han Sen felt a great force of strength hit his Rex spike, which made it tremble. The force built up until Han Sen's hands went soft, and the flaming Rex spike was knocked out his hands and sent flying for a good distance. On its descent, it crashed into the ice and slid into the murky depths of the sea below. Han Sen's hand was bleeding, laden with cuts. The brute power of the frosty bear was too much. Lai Zinglan fired a few arrows towards the bear with a bow of his own. Its purpose was suppressive fire, which would allow Han Sen to fall back and recover. Han Sen summoned the flaming Rex spike back but decided not to target the bear head-on again, face to face. With his weapon in hand, he focused on dodging the bear's repeated attacks, waiting for the perfect opening. The giant frosty bear was, on average, slower than most super creatures. Still, Han Sen had to use everything he had to stay out of the way of the bear's paw strikes. But the situation became grimmer and grimmer as time went on, and he believed himself to have underestimated how powerful super creatures really were. Adult super creatures had a fitness level of around 300 on average. Han Sen's fitness level was 170. With all the hyper-geno arts he had learnt, the most power he could muster was equivalent to a fitness level of 200. He was still far weaker than the super creatures he was anxious to hunt, especially in terms of raw power. The frosty bear's power was far stronger than Han Sen's, but its lower than average speed was the boon he needed. Its speed provided Han Sen the perfect opportunity to fight back. Lai Zinglan opened his gene lock and fired a few more arrows toward the frosty bear. One of the sacred blood arrows he fired hit the bear's ear, which enraged the creature. The bear then changed its target again, opting to pursue Lai Zinglan. Lai Zinglan's movement was quite good. He may have lacked the mobility and precise agility Han Sen possessed, but Lai Zinglan's speed was top-notch when going in a relatively straight line. This was what Lai Zinglan now tried to do. Unfortunately, the frosty bear was not entirely outpaced, and it managed to remain quite close in its chase. Wang Yuheng's body was finally starting to get better. He quickly grabbed some ice and threw it at the bear to draw its attention back to himself again. The frosty bear then abandoned its hunt of Lai Zinglan and resumed its pursuit of Wang Yuheng. Han Sen's bolt hit the frosty bear's neck, but this time, it did not turn around and switch targets again. It remained fixated on its chase of Wang Yuheng. It kept chasing him, ignoring the others. Oh heavens, I may not survive much longer. Somebody, I beseech your aid to save me from a wretched demise. Wang Yuheng slipped and fell. With only a second to spare, he managed to dodge the bear's next attack. He was in danger, and he could succumb to the creature's next, fatal strike any second now. His body was also accumulating further layers of frost, as his hair and eyebrows appeared to be painted white. Death was not far off for Wang Yuheng. Run to me, Han Sen yelled to Wang Yuheng. Han Sen was holding the peacock crossbow with his finger on the trigger. Arm raised, he took aim at the bear and remained motionless. Wang Yuheng pulled himself up and ran towards Han Sen, screaming for him to fire the bolt. But Han Sen did not move an inch as he waited for Wang Yuheng to draw even closer. The bear came after him, unceasing, with its filthy maw wide open. Its tongue was lax out of its mouth, and it occasionally tried to lick up Wang Yuheng. Fortunately, Wang Yuheng was a powerful man. Even when he suffered from the frostbite that he had incurred, he still managed to stumble to where he was told to be and outpace the bear. Lai Zinglan continued to fire arrows from a distance, trying his best to ease the pressure and relieve Wang Yuheng from the pursuit of his would-be killer. His eyes shone like starlight. He possessed a strange power, as each arrow was fired with impeccable aim. They may not have dealt any damage, but he had managed to strike the bear's eyes a few times, to buy Wang Yuheng as much time as he could. Wang Yuheng had finally reached Han Sen's position when he ducked and rolled along the ice to dodge one last attack. Han Sen was facing the frosty bear that was now only 1 meter away. He pulled the trigger and fired at the beast with a rapid pace. All of the bolts were fired consecutively, each one set on an airborne voyage to intercept the rampaging bear. 6 raven bolts launched consecutively into the frosty bear's face. The beast tried to look away to avoid them piercing any of its eyes, but it was too late. The bear had drawn too near to the launch point of the bolts, and it didn't have sufficient time to react. One of the bolts struck directly underneath the eye, which caused it to bleed. The frosty bear became incredibly angry. It threw itself back on its 2 hind legs and a frigid aura emanated from its body. Its paws came down, trying to strike Hansen. Hansen put the peacock crossbow away and evaded the frosty bear's lethal attack. He then jumped into the air, summoned Flaming Rex Spike, and took aim at his foe's head. Pang! Fire and blood spewed everywhere as Hansen crowned the bear's head with an ugly scorch mark. Damage such as that was not enough to take the creature's life, but it did trigger its rage. Hansen was at the center of its attention now. It quickly lunged forward with its paws in an attempt to grab Hansen. Again, Hansen dodged. He evaded the bear, but it was close. He scratched his arm and noticed the presence of a cut that was bleeding through his armor. Hansen retreated, with Frosty Bear still gunning for him. Luckily, this was Hansen, and he did not fear the fatal, chilly aura of the bear. If the roles were reversed, and Wang Yuheng was on the run, he'd be dead right now. Big dumb bear, over here. Wang Yuheng had already run a great distance away. After his swift recovery, he noticed Hansen was in danger and so he did his best to provoke the bear. This simple touting always worked in the past, and its winning streak did not end this day. Despite the hatred the bear felt for Hansen, it was once again attracted by Wang Yuheng. It was as if Wang Yuheng had murdered its parents or something. Hansen knew that if this were to continue, they'd be unable to win the fight. The Flaming Rex Spike was strong enough to wreck the bear's body, but Hansen wasn't. His fitness was not high enough, which meant he was unable to deal the deadly damage he needed to bring an end to the bear. But Hansen knew what to do. Without saying a word, he rushed after the frosty bear, and at the same time, he cast the Dongshuan Sutra to simulate the energy of the bone elephant. The overwhelming power of a super elephant now buffed Hansen. His body almost imploded under the duress of handling such supreme power, as his muscles and bones struggled to maintain control. Wang Yuheng continued running forward. Lai Xinglan continued firing arrows to aid how he could, but they were useless against the enraged beast. The frosty bear was closing in on Wang Yuheng. Hansen was pushing his potential power to the max, and it was reaching a tipping point. The bones inside him rattled and screamed for reprieve. With the bear still focused on Wang Yuheng, Hansen leapt into the air with both of his hands clutching the Flaming Rex Spike. He swung his weapon and all the terrifying power that accumulated inside him was unleashed. It was as if space-time itself was dealt a blow by the attack, and the air thundered with frightening sound. The Rex Spike, blazing with fire, brought down a hideous, devastating blow against the bear's head. A deep, squelching thud accompanied its landing as the skull of its target sunk somewhat. The flames snapped in a dizzying crowd of embers as the fur of the bear's head turned to soot. After that hit, Hansen immediately summoned his wings to fly up to the sky. Most of his energy had been drained following the strike. If the bear was not killed by that attack and immediately retaliated, Hansen wouldn't have had the energy to dodge the foe. Hansen observed the field of battle from above and noticed the bear had stopped moving. Blood seeped from the wounds of its caved-in skull as its body wobbled. The frosty bear blasted, which shocked Hansen. Then the frosty bear ran off. Hansen's heart was brought much joy. He knew that his elephant Rex strike must have dealt an insane amount of damage to the bear, otherwise, it wouldn't have tried to run off. After it, we cannot lose it, Hansen called out from the air as he took off in airborne pursuit. Hansen's body felt weak, though. He couldn't attack the bear again for a short while. It was lucky that the flying beast's soul did not draw from an individual's strength. If it did, he wouldn't have been able to keep up with the fleeing creature. Wang Yuheng and Lai Xinglan obeyed the command and also went after it. They tried to cut off and surround the escaping bear, but their attempts failed. They did not have Super Beast soul weapons, so they could not even deal damage to the bear's pelt. But the frosty bear's brain must have been heavily damaged, as its judgment and movement made little sense. It did not try to jump into the sea for a quicker escape. Instead, it ran off towards the ice field. It still had speed, but its movements were shaky. Strike the wound on its head. Lai Xinglan fired an arrow at the wound created by Hansen's elephant Rex strike. This caused the wound to gush out more blood, and the beast to cry out in pain. Wang Yuheng wanted to rush ahead, but he only had a single ancient sword, and thus could not get close. The frosty bear was managing to pick up its pace, despite the pain it was enduring. The three of them were in tight pursuit, but they eventually lagged behind and felt themselves losing it. Fortunately, the damage dealt to the brain was severe, and it wasn't working well as a result. The bear did not change direction once, maintaining its course the entire time. As a result, the trio didn't lose its tracks. Most people did avoid the bear, but one group didn't. Instead, they ran towards it, wanting a piece of the action. Why do we have to step aside? Whoever kills it, owns it, plain and simple. I don't see your name on the bear, so why can't we kill it, The man leading the group said. Lai Zinglan looked at the people and realized it was Kai Ziyuan's men from the Black God Army. Although they belonged to the goddess shelter, the four armies were individual and Lai Zinglan didn't have the authority to tell them to stand down. After the people rushed towards the bear, others who were nearby noticed the possibility of nabbing an easy kill, too. They also sought to join the fray. The possibility of earning an easy beast's soul was all too enticing. It was too late for Han Sen to stop them, however. He watched many people descend on the bear, to which the creature they were pursuing had a wretched reaction. It summoned its frosty aura and unleashed a hail of ice chips to pelt the fresh attackers, freezing the majority of them. The strongest of those who sought to join in were most likely of a fitness level of about 100. They had not even unlocked their gene locks, and as a result, they had no chance of withstanding such an attack. The bear then pummeled the ground, which led to a cascade of blood. A few people were crushed, and none of their bodies were left complete. Severed limbs were strewn about, and organs were left exposed. One person was crushed into mincemeat. Even though Han Sen wanted to stop it, he didn't have the strength right now. His energy had yet to recover from his first usage of Elephant Rex Strike, so he couldn't use it again just yet. And ordinary strikes were useless against the rampaging behemoth. Han Sen could only hope his energy would recover soon. If he could wallop the bear with one more Elephant Rex Strike, it would surely perish. Oh no, the frosty bear is headed towards one of my night class shelters. Wai Zinglan's face changed. He called out to Wang Yuheng, saying, "Little uncle, you have to draw it away." Wang Yuheng, with a depressed look on his face, said, "I assure you, I am trying. But the fiend is no longer right in the head. It won't pay me heed as it once did." Wai Zinglan's eyes turned red. He rushed ahead, attempting to evacuate the shelter that the bear was approaching. When the frosty bear saw it, the beast made no delay in targeting it. The people inside would not have enough time to escape. It was a shelter oriented around business, so most of the people inside didn't even know how to fight. If the frosty bear entered, it'd be a massacre. Blood would run up and down the walls as it hacked and hewed the people inside with little to no resistance. Many people inside the shelter had witnessed the bear's previous killing spree out on the tundra. It created mass chaos and panic, as people climbed over each other in a bid to escape with their lives. The halls were clogged with people as they rushed out in disheveled unison. The gates were congested with the maddened people, which made evacuation efforts even slower. Han Sen looked and frowned. Although the shelter belonged to Lai Zinglan, every shelter across the ice field paid taxes, which helped to line Han Sen's pockets with cash. This shelter in particular was amongst the highest paying shelters when it came to taxes. Han Sen didn't want his income reduced, and neither did he want to see people slain. His energy had yet to recover, so he couldn't use Elephant Rex Strike again. The frosty bear drew near the shelter and threw its weight against the wall, as if it were trying to claw its way over. Its front paws created deep scratch marks on the surface of the wall. The people in the shelter, beyond those walls, screamed in fear. The wall was all that separated them from the frosty bear. They could see it, though, all murderous and mad-looking. Everyone watched Han Sen descend from the sky to land, with a giant fire-wreathed weapon in hand. It looked like an 50 drill head that was spinning at max speed. It looked terribly powerful. "Go to hell, bear. Eat my flaming asshole cracker." Han Sen leapt into the air, his war cry emboldening his spirit. The fiery Rex spike was aimed at the butthole of the frosty bear, which was still up against the wall. With a tremendous thrust, Han Sen rammed his weapon up its anus. Fire blazed and blood gushed as the 2-meter-long drill ground inside the bear's posterior. Han Sen's heart was skipping like mad, and his bones groaned under the thundering power he had summoned. Han Sen had once again pushed his strength to the max, and with both hands clutching the weapon, he shoved it as deep as it could go. Half of the spitting Rex spike had been pushed in, streams of blood squirting into the wind like petals on the breeze. Everyone who watched this scene was frozen in place, without motion. The strike they had just witnessed made them extremely happy, though the muscles in their buttocks clenched tighter. Roar! The frosty bear let out a painful cry. It attempted to turn around and grab Han Sen, but Han Sen let go of the flaming Rex spike to dodge, and when he was clear, he kicked the handle of the protruding Rex spike 7 times. Every kick was like a hammer, malleting a peg deeper and deeper into the brown earth. After the 7th kick, Han Sen shouted to the sky. He drew what remained of his power to his fists and punched the handle of the Rex spike, the only part that had not been driven inside the bear. After that, the entire flaming wreck spike was inside its body. Blood cascaded from its behind as the bear cried out, but its yelp was cut short as the body slumped down to the ground heavily. It resulted in a quake that vibrated the entire shelter. Super creature hunted, giant frosty bear. The beast's soul has not been acquired. The flesh of this creature is inedible, but you may harvest its life geno essence. Consume its life geno essence to obtain a random numeric amount of super geno points, ranging from 0 to 10. Hansen heard the familiar voice but was disappointed not to receive the beast's soul, despite the incredible difficulty he had in slaying the super creature. But Hansen had to expect it sometime. Still, he did have a high drop rate of beast souls when it came to super creatures. Of course, no one would mind an extra goodie for performing a trying task, and the same applied to Hansen. Therefore, he had been hopeful that he'd be able to procure the Frosty Bear's beast soul. Hansen, Wang Yuheng, and Lai Zinglan sat in a triangular formation in an ice cave. They placed a fist-sized life geno essence in the middle. Wang Yuheng gulped, asking, "Is this really a life geno essence?" Lai Zinglan could not believe what they had accomplished this day, and so he said, "Did we really kill a super creature? Are we the first to ever do so in the second god's sanctuary? Bossman, are you going to sell the life geno essence? According to the contract I signed with you, I should receive a 30% cut of the proceeds. If you want, I'll pay you the additional 70% and purchase it off you entirely," Wang Yuheng asked, looking at Hansen. From the contract that they had signed, it stated that Hansen was to receive 50%, Wang Yuheng was to receive 30%, and Lai Zinglan was to receive 20%. If Hansen decided that he didn't want it, what happened with the life geno essence next fell to Wang Yuheng. "Of course I want it. I want super geno points," Hansen replied succinctly. There was no way he was going to pass up such a treasure. Wang Yuheng coughed and said, "Bossman, from what I have heard, after the Jai family obtained their own life geno essence, no progress was made. They tried everything they could, but they were unable to obtain super geno points. If you return with this in your possession, it will most likely yield the same result. If you want, sell it to me, or foregoing that, provide it to me in the Wang estate. We can investigate its secrets on your behalf and see if we can learn how to obtain super geno points from the life geno essence." The Jai family's life geno essence was never consumed. Hansen was surprised to hear this. He had assumed that Jai King had eaten the life geno essence a long time ago. He did not expect that they were still investigating how to obtain super geno points from the artifact, and couldn't simply eat it straight away. Yes, they have tried a great many different ways of eating it, but they were all to no avail. The life geno essence is like obsidian. It cannot be hewn in two, burnt, or drowned, Wang Yuheng said. Lai Zinglan then chimed in to say, "It is, indeed. I hacked into the Jai family's system and perused their records. They have tried countless different methods, but they were all hopeless. They're at their wits' end, trying to figure out how they might gain super geno points. They even called upon professionals from the Alliance, but that was futile, too. Zero progress has been made. That is most likely why the Alliance has yet to make an announcement about the super creature and super geno points." "Did they try swallowing it?" Hansen asked. "They did. It was useless swallowing it, as well. It came out whole and was not digested in the slightest. This is my first time getting a life geno essence, as well. How about you let me investigate it first? The share you deserve. Do you want it now or next time?" Hansen did not want to give it to the Wang family for research. But, if he really couldn't figure out how to consume the item, then he might have to reconsider. "Save it for next time," Wang Yuheng and Lai Zinglan replied. Simultaneously, they didn't have any particular lack of finance, so they weren't willing to give up their share for money. And so, they decided to save it for next time. Hansen was researching the life geno essence, and the rumor of him potentially slaying a super creature began to spread. After all, there were many witnesses, and there were many factions privy to the knowledge of the existence of super creatures. Jai Yanran then sought to give Hansen a call but found that his line was busy. He was in a call with someone else. Jai Yanran hung up her communicator and did not push further. She knew it was only a matter of time before Hansen would come looking for her. She was sure of it. Hansen left his room to visit Jai Yanran's office. Now that the whole world seemed to know what he had done, he felt she deserved a more thorough explanation. "You really killed a super creature in the second god's sanctuary?" Jai Yanran asked, with her mouth wide open in shock as she looked at Hansen. Even though Hansen had explained the details of what transpired, she found it difficult to believe. So, she had to ask the question again. "I said I killed it, didn't I? That means I killed it. Is it really that difficult for you to believe?" Hansen sat on Jai Yanran's office chair, holding her as she sat on his lap. Will you die if you don't bluff me? Jai Yanran jested, as she looked at Han Sen's boisterous and cocky face. She couldn't help but squeeze his waist in response. What did the family say? Han Sen smiled and asked. My dad told me to ask if you really did kill a super creature. He asked if you received the beast's soul and life geno essence, and whether or not you'd be willing to sell them. Jai Yanran explained to Han Sen, without dilly-dallying. I killed it, yes, but I didn't receive the beast's soul. I did get the life geno essence, however. If you need it, I will give it to you. Han Sen smiled. Han Sen understood Jai Yanran, so that was why he said that. Jai Yanran loved what he had just said, and replied, that was my dad's idea. If you need it, you should keep it for yourself. You earned it. So, don't worry, there is no pressure for you to give it up. And if you do end up selling it, please consider selling it to the Jai family first. After all, I am your girlfriend. Give me some more time to research this stubborn thing first. If I am still unable to consume it, I'll allow my wife to handle it, Han Sen said, smiling. Who is your wife? Jai Yanran rolled her eyes, but she was super pleased on the inside. Han Sen was in a rush, trying to find a way he could consume the life geno essence. If he still couldn't find a way, he wouldn't mind giving one away for the Jai family to research. After all, the Jai family was powerful and far-reaching. There was a high chance they might find the solution, and it'd make Jai Yanran happy. Han Sen knew that Jai Yanran had never complained about his status during their time together, but he knew that she had received a lot of pressure from her family regarding her choice to be with him. The life geno essence could earn Jai Yanran a lot of relief from her family. Of course, giving her the life geno essence was the worst-case scenario. Han Sen wanted to eat it first and foremost, and if he was able to eat it, he wouldn't have to sell it to the Jai family. Han Sen had a few theories of his own regarding the nature of the life geno essences. He could not, however, prove them. If people could not eat the essence from the first god's sanctuary, that meant the life geno essences were the same between both shelters. For absorption, they'd need a special method. But Han Sen had eaten the life geno essence without trouble in the first god's sanctuary. Now that he thought back to his time there, the first god's sanctuary was different than the second god's sanctuary in a number of ways. The first life geno essence he ate was not obtained through hunting. It was because the golden growler spat the life geno essence to the baby golden growler, and Han Sen had stolen it. Ever since then, Han Sen had been able to absorb super geno points by slaying super creatures. It was only now that Han Sen realized that might have been the reason. Aside from that, Han Sen could not remember any other differences between now and the time he was in the first god's sanctuary. Everything he had in the first god's sanctuary, he had now, but even better. The only difference was his inability to consume the life geno essences. Han Sen could only theorize that the reason he could absorb life geno essences in the first god's sanctuary was the golden growler. But thinking of things this way, Han Sen could only hope that his predictions weren't true. There was no way he'd be able to find another super creature willing to spit out another life geno essence for him. There must be a way to absorb a life geno essence, but whatever it is, I just haven't found it yet, Han Sen thought to himself. Humans were getting better and better in this world. It was only a matter of time before someone else succeeded in the task of killing a super creature, especially in the first god's sanctuary. It was likely more and more would be killed there. Han Sen did not think there was a point in keeping it a secret anymore. But Han Sen knew that killing a super creature in the second god's sanctuary was a deed that no one aside from him would be able to accomplish for a long time to come. The super creatures in the second god's sanctuary were frighteningly powerful. No one could kill a super creature unless it was severely injured beforehand, without first having fully maxed out their super geno points in the first god's sanctuary. If others wanted to kill a super creature in the second god's sanctuary, they would have to wait until someone had maxed out their super geno points in the first god's sanctuary. Since the people in the first god's sanctuary couldn't consume life geno essences, no one would be able to max out their super geno points before coming to the second god's sanctuary. No progress could be made with the current state of things. Right now, Han Sen was the anomaly. He was the only one who could make progress. Only he could hunt super creatures in the second god's sanctuary and exclusively obtain the resources such beasts would provide. Han Sen was a vacant leader, deflecting all tasks and leadership responsibilities onto her, so she was the one who had to attend to every request. In addition to that, she had to take care of the Special Forces business. This left no time to herself. It does not matter if you are the leader of the shelter or just the leader of the Special Forces, you should do something. It was difficult for Young Manly to attend and finish all the work she had for the day, but when it was done, she had to pay Han Sen a visit. This was something important to discuss, but when she walked in, she saw Han Sen sitting on a chair. one hand holding a golden gourd and his other hand busy stroking his silver fox. There was a silver-haired lady behind him, also. She was busy massaging his shoulders as another blonde-haired lady tended to his feet. She thought it wasn't fair on her, having to work so hard every day while Han-sen reclined in his chair getting waited on, hand and foot. I am satisfied with the quality of your work, Han-sen said, smiling. Young Manly had been busy doing a lot of stuff at all times. She was practically in charge of the ice field. You should at least write your own reports. Young Manly could not cope with Han-sen's current attitude. She did not understand why a person who made so much money was so carefree and casual about all things. She also wondered why he let her be in charge of everything, as well. With the position she was in, it wouldn't take much for her to bring down Han-sen's empire if she chose to. Lining her own pockets by skimming the books would have been easy enough, too. But Young Manly found that Han-sen didn't care about the business at all. Being a leader of the ice field might have been a great boon of wealth for somebody else, but to a person who had just killed a super creature, the ice field were nothing. I can help you write the report, but there is a mission you must attend to yourself, Young Manly told Han-sen. What mission would that be? Han-sen looked at Young Manly as he asked. A young man has just arrived at the second god's sanctuary, born on the ice field. He requests that you protect him, Young Manly said. Han-sen furrowed his eyebrows and asked, where will I find the time to do such a thing? Let one of the other groups bring him into the fold. I won't stand for that. Young Manly lifted a smile. Of course you will. Even if it was the son of God himself, he'd get the same treatment as everyone else, Han-sen proudly proclaimed. He's not the son of God, but his surname is Kin. So, you go attend to that. I am unable to help you in such a task. Young Manly shrugged. Kin? Han-sen looked puzzled and asked, what is his relation to Captain Kin? He is Captain Kin's nephew. Young Manly smiled at Han-sen again. Ah, I see. Then have him come find me. Han-sen's tone changed at the drop of a hat. Suzai Okiao. Han-sen looked at the person with surprise, not expecting that he too had become an evolver and arrived at the ice field. Brother Sen, I have finally found the organization. Suzai Okiao excitedly grabbed Han-sen, looking as if he wanted to cry. Han-sen chatted with Suzai Okiao for a bit, and then asked Young Manly to give him a position in the goddess army. After that, he went on to see Qin Wenjiao. He looked barely 20 years old, and he exuded the image of a gentle, young man. He had a soft baby face, one that Han-sen thought women loved. Greetings, Uncle Sen. I am Qin Wenjiao. The young man was polite in greeting Han-sen. But in Han-sen's heart, he was taken aback, thinking, Uncle, am I old enough to be considered so? I'm only in my 20s, a few years older than you. It seemed like Qin Wenjiao understood what discomforting thoughts now plagued Han-sen's mind. He said, my auntie told me to respect you, and since you both are of a similar age, I thought I'd call you uncle. If I didn't call you uncle, my auntie would think I was being disrespectful. I suppose that is okay, Han-sen responded, caring little for the intricacies of formalities, overall. He looked at Qin Wenjiao and asked, why do you want me to be your guardian? Qin Wenjiao replied, my auntie has always told me that you are a good and powerful man. It is my hope that one day I can become like you. It was fortunate that I was sent to the ice field, so I came here hoping to learn from you. And do not fret, I won't be a burden or cause you unnecessary trouble. I will work and train around your schedule. Really, your auntie really said that about me. Han-sen's heart was happy to hear that, and so he had to ask. Yes, she talks about you often. She frequently uses you as a role model in our teachings, someone we should strive to be like. The young ones in our family really admire you, Qin Wenjiao said. Can you give me an example of how Qin Xuan usually compliments me? Han-sen shamelessly asked. Qin Wenjiao was a young man who was polite and knew his place, so Han-sen had no problem with becoming his guardian. What surprised Han-sen the most, though, was how talented Qin Wenjiao looked. Now that super creatures had been found, Han-sen wondered why the Qin family allowed him to become an evolver so soon. He could have waited another few years to see if he could collect super geno points. Along their journey towards the peach forest, they managed to kill a good number of creatures. When they reached the eaves of the peach forest, Han-sen did not dare bring them inside. He took a quick look himself, though, and noticed that all the flowers had wilted. Beneath the green leaves, however, he could spot green fruit that was as small as beans. It seemed it would be a while longer before they were ripe enough for collection and consumption. As they got ready to leave, they heard a monster roar from within the forest. It came from very far away, so the noise was faint. But Han-sen, panning the surroundings with his ears like radar dishes, felt his face drop. The noise sounded like it came from the black bear that he encountered at the giant tree. The roar was a mixture of sadness and anger, and he couldn't imagine what might have spurred its cry. Although Han Sen greatly desired to find out what had happened, he wanted to take Qin Wenchao and Su Xiaoqiao to the nearest shelter first. When he took them there, he bid that they should wait for him. Then he returned to the forest borders. Standing outside the peach forest, Han Sen could still faintly hear the cries of the black bear. The continued noise eased his worry that the creature might be dead, and taking great care, he stepped into the forest and treaded lightly as he followed the sound of the cries. Because he hadn't brought the silver fox with him, he made sure to take the utmost care along the way. Suddenly, Han Sen saw a pink little snake slithering. Had he never visited this forest before, he would have continued on his way. But the pink snake looked a little inconspicuous. It was only 1 foot long, and it was very thin. With its pink body, it looked practically harmless. It gave the impression that it was the sort of creature you could simply squish underfoot. But Han Sen remembered this snake. This pink little snake was under the giant tree, practicing with all the other creatures. It was a scary snake. Han Sen felt as if something was wrong, so he opened his jean lock and planned to run off. But that was when he noticed a group of snakes surrounding him. There were red, green, black, white, and patterned snakes. They were all around the ground and all along the trees like vines. He couldn't tell how many were there. The king of these creatures is so evil. Han Sen was shocked at what had happened, so he summoned his wings and tried to fly away. But then he saw a snake with wings leap out of the trees. Even the pink little snake had transparent blood wings. It flew above Han Sen and circled there, prohibiting any chance of an airborne escape. Han Sen quickly summoned his flaming Rex spike, the 2-meter-long weapon. He threw it at a group of snakes, which instantly incinerated them into charcoal. The strike formed a gap in the ring of snakes around him, and he dashed through it. It didn't take Han Sen long to realize that the pink snake was very similar to the Wolf King and Pegasi King. Its powers rested in the abundance of its subordinates and its ability to command them. The snakes established a formation, and although they had trouble in their attempts to harm Han Sen, they forced Han Sen to go deeper into the forest. What does this pink snake want? Han Sen was shocked, but then he noticed that the pink snake might not want to kill him. It just continued to push him deeper and deeper into the peach forest. Who knew what it wanted, but that was what it did. It was almost obvious how much the pink snake wanted to drive him deeper. Han Sen did not want to underestimate the intelligence of these creatures. He wanted to escape, but not a single window of opportunity had become available. The forest was full of snake-like creatures. Sometimes, they flew out from the crowns of peach trees like locusts, a plague everywhere. On and on, they banished Han Sen into the deeper recesses of the peach forest. The snakes were chasing Han Sen towards the black bear. Han Sen had been pushed 100 miles, and the roars of the bear were clearer and more distinct. The cries were louder than he had imagined, and the bear was extremely angry now. Han Sen gritted his teeth, thinking he might as well speed up and fly towards the bear. The crowd of snakes did not attack, but they picked up their pace to follow him. For some reason, they really wanted Han Sen to go there. Perhaps it was because of the snake group, but Han Sen did not see any other creatures. The peach forest seemed to be solely for the countless snakes. Inside the peach forest, Han Sen had no idea how far he had now traveled. All that occupied his vision were snakes and trees. As he went, the roar of the bear came closer and closer. From afar, Han Sen could see that a section of the peach forest was in chaos. Snapped trunks of trees were strewn about, branches littered the ground, and soil had been churned up in a mess. He ascended a hill, and he finally saw the black bear. It was guarding the entrance of a cave, its body stained in blood. It roared to the sky. In front of it was the bone elephant. The bone elephant's trunk and tusks kept bashing the bloodied bear, and it was clear that the bear stood no chance against the enraged elephant. It had many wounds on its body, and blood oozed from its mouth. Still, it continued to guard the cave entrance and keep the elephant from passing. Does a treasure reside within the cave? Are both super creatures fighting for treasure? Han Sen changed his position to get a good look at what was inside the cave. What he saw inside was a smaller black bear, peeping its head out of the cave's entrance. Now Han Sen understood why, despite its inferior strength, the black bear insisted on guarding the cave. It was protecting its child. The bone elephant's body was turning red, while the black bear's body was turning pitch black. They were both strong when it came to vitality, and the scene of them battling, in view of the hill, was a shocking spectacle. Rocks had been broken, trees had been unearthed, wood chips and leaves were mixed into the soil, and the ground trembled when the titans collided. The black bear was huge, and he thought it was scarier than the frosty bear. The frosty bear possessed ice powers, but the black bear had powerful vitality. Even though Han Sen had his flaming Rex spike with him, he doubted it'd be able to penetrate the creature's hide. It was a shame that the bear had to confront a much more powerful enemy like the bone elephant. They were both magnificent super creatures, yet if one was weaker in one particular department, the weakness would be obvious for the other to see and exploit. The big black bear held back a tusk that was being driven towards it. The power was too much, though. The bear was pushed back against the cliffside by the bone elephant, the cliffside developing a crack under the force. The tusk penetrated through the bear's defense and skewered the bear. Blood coated the tusk that now pierced it. Pang! The black bear kicked the bone elephant's neck, which made it fall back a bit. But the bear's attack was, quite obviously, not very effective. If it continued fighting like this, it would only be a matter of time before it died. What if this was a chance for another easy kill? If the black bear could produce babies, perhaps its life geno-essence was the same as the golden growler's. Maybe it could be absorbed by humans. Thinking about this, Han Sen got excited. Maybe this was Lady Luck smiling on him, providing him the opportunity to be the one who cracked the secrets of the life geno-essence. Han Sen then contemplated when might be the right time for him to strike. That was when he suddenly heard some noise come from behind. In fright, he turned around and saw the pink snake writhe around a branch near him. Repeatedly, it stuck its tongue out and hissed. Han Sen froze in place. He had no idea when the snake had drawn so near. He hadn't sensed its approach at all. That should have been impossible against someone like Han Sen, who had superb senses. The pink snake was 2 feet away from Han Sen, and so he didn't dare to move. He was afraid that the pink snake would strike if he tried anything. The flaming Rex spike was too big for the snake, too. It was ideal for taking on big super creatures, but for something as small as the snake, Han Sen would need precision. The Rex spike was too cumbersome and large to effectively target the snake. The pink snake, however, did not intend to attack Han Sen. The snake watched Han Sen, and then it squeezed its body and broke the branch it had slithered along. It then writhed itself around the broken branch and used it to write on the ground. Han Sen watched the pink snake with surprise. He had no idea what it wanted, but its intelligence was astounding. Han Sen watched the pink snake hold onto the branch and draw a few simple lines, which eventually formed the shape of an elephant. Han Sen quickly realized it was referring to the bone elephant. But Han Sen did not know why the snake was drawing. As he wondered why, he noticed the pink snake draw an X on top of the image. Seeing that the bone elephant's picture had been crossed, Han Sen then understood that the pink snake wanted Han Sen to kill it. Han Sen was flabbergasted. He thought the pink snake might have wanted to get an easy kill along with him by targeting the black bear. After all, the black bear had already been grievously injured and was severely weaker compared to the bone elephant. It would have been possible to wait until the bear was on the brink of death before waltzing up and killing it in a single strike, but the little pink snake wanted to get rid of the bone elephant instead, and this surprised Han Sen a great deal. Han Sen remembered when he was under the giant peach tree, the pink snake and the black bear were the same. Inside them, there was no energy flowing. It was just a blur. But the bone elephant and the little black bear had a special energy flow inside them. Is there any connection between that and what's going on now? The more Han Sen thought about things, the more shocked he became. If the little pink snake's target were the creatures that had energy inside them, its desire to deal with the bone elephant seemed normal. But now that the big black bear was heavily injured, if the little pink snake got rid of the bone elephant, the cub would have lost its protection. The cub might end up as another target of the pink snake. After all, this forest did seem to be the pink snake's territory. With its army of snakes, the other creatures could be considered outsiders. They didn't have others to help them. These kings are always so menacing. Han Sen shouted in his heart, but hope still resided there. The pink snake forced Han Sen to go near the bone elephant, as it planned for them both to tackle the monster together. The pink snake itself was afraid of the power that the bone elephant possessed, so it sought to use the human called Han Sen for help. Han Sen was interested in both the bone elephant and the cub inside the cave. The 3 life geno-essences he had collected so far were obtained from super creatures that did not leave bodies behind. Han Sen guessed that might have been because they were first-generation super creatures. The bone elephant and the black bear were second-generation super creatures, and if they were anything like the golden growler, their bodies would not disintegrate when they were killed. Instead, they'd leave behind an edible life geno-essence. Han Sen, regardless of the snake's pushing, believed he should take out the bone elephant. Otherwise, if the big bear died, it'd be harder for Han Sen to get the cub, as it would then be in the possession of the bone elephant. The pink snake watched Han Sen still standing there. It opened its mouth and hissed, prompting him to go. Han Sen groaned and then summoned his flaming Rex spike. After that, he approached the bone elephant. The pink snake saw Han Sen rush forward, so it spread its blood wings and flew off like an arrow into the bone elephant's ear. Its aim was fairly clear, in that it wished to cause the elephant harm from inside its body. The bone elephant sensed the pink snake's sly attack, as it wriggled around in the elephant's ear. In response, it used its trunk to grab a hold of it and pull it out. The pink snake writhed and wriggled in the air, dodging the follow-up attack. Han Sen's flaming Rex spike was driven down onto the elephant's body with a fair strike. A metal noise rung out after the hit, however, and only white marks scuffed the red bones. Han Sen's hands were numbed by the strike. He almost couldn't hold the weapon anymore. "It's tough," Han Sen said to himself in surprise. The elephant reacted to the attack with added rage, despite not being injured very much. It attempted to turn around and rush towards Han Sen, but the big bear's paws latched onto the elephant's tusks and prevented it from turning. That was the opportunity the pink snake needed to try to wriggle its way into the elephant's ear again. Han Sen raised the flaming Rex spike again and brought himself closer to the bone elephant's body. The bone elephant's bones were totally red, and there were no apparent weaknesses. So, Han Sen took aim at the thinnest bone he could find and gave it a good wallop. The bone elephant's tusks were still being grabbed by the bear, and it couldn't move. It trumpeted to the sky. With an enormous burst of strength, it picked up the bear as it clung onto the tusks and threw it towards the mountainside. There was a large crashing sound and much of the hill was ruined. The bone elephant then quickly retrieved the snake from its ear with its trunk again. It kicked its thick back legs, one of which had the flaming Rex spike bearing down on it. One foot hit Han Sen and sent him flying away. The bone elephant was so strong, it effortlessly battled 3 opponents and dominated them with ease. Han Sen's body was sent careering through several peach trees before he dropped to the ground. Although he had his golden armor and gargoyle glyph for protection, he still ended up spitting blood. His chest was on fire. Fudge, this bone elephant is so much harder than the frosty giant bear. Han Sen bit down on his teeth and pulled himself back up on 2 feet. The bone elephant trumpeted again and lowered its head, aligning its tusks with the immobile black bear. It took off sprinting towards the bear, looking like a mountain falling from the sky. If the bear was hit, it'd be very dead. The big bear had already been significantly injured, on top of the situation it had just been thrown into. It couldn't get itself free from the rubble, and a finishing strike from the tusks seemed likely. Roar! The cub that was hiding in the cave, seeing its mother about to be killed, let out a young scream. The fur on its body looked obsidian as it emerged from the shadow of the cave. It hopped onto the bone elephant and scratched a few deep marks into its bones. The bone elephant screamed in pain as it used its trunk to remove the cub that was on top of it. This bought the big bear enough time to climb out of the rubble. Seeing the bone elephant about to hit the cub, the big bear grabbed onto the elephant's trunk and fell down on its knees. It roared, pulling down on the trunk as best it could, not allowing the elephant to move it. The bone elephant kept moving its trunk, trying to get rid of the big bear that clung onto it so tightly. The powerful downward force of the bear had its feet digging into the earth, creating 2 large trenches as it pulled as hard as it could. The pink snake used this third opportunity to fire itself into the elephant's ear like a bolt of lightning. It caused pain to the elephant, which had it screaming to the skies. In its sudden madness, it managed to toss the bear and the cub away. Han Sen was behind the bone elephant's back. He performed Toxic Dragon Drill and once again took aim at his foe's backside. He wanted to replicate the results of his battle against the giant frosty bear and break his enemy's butthole. The strong spin dug hard into the elephant's clenched anus, which caused a terrific firework of sparks. But it didn't drill for long, and soon after, it stopped. The bone elephant's body was built from steel, and Han Sen lacked the power to drive it further. The big bear was the tank that absorbed damage. If the bear had not been there to sustain most of the bone elephant's attacks, Han Sen and the cub would have died many times over. Han Sen gave it everything he had, trying to draw its attention while the bone elephant dealt with the big bear. Although the cub was not as strong as the bone elephant or its mother, it had obsidian claws. It was still better than Han Sen's flaming Rex spike. The cub was whacked by the trunk and sent flying. Its little body knocked down a few peach trees. What surprised Han Sen the most about this, however, was the way it leapt right back onto its feet and went running back into battle. Han Sen was in shock as he watched it. The black cub was very young, yet it was already that resilient. When it grew up, it was sure to be as strong as the bone elephant. The mountains shook and the ground was torn asunder. A few scary creatures were battling to the death, and in their midst was Han Sen. He was like a pawn, only doing minor things. He did not dare to use Elephant Rex Strike, no matter how much he wanted to. He was too weak to fight the bone elephant, and he knew he was little more than a distraction in the grander scale of this fight. Hansen would become weak after a single use of Elephant Rex Strike, so it was not a skill he dared to use on a whim. The power the skill required was massive, and even with Long Live and Jade Sun Force, it'd take an hour for him to regenerate the energy it used. The situation had become complicated. The bone elephant was screaming louder and louder, however. It stomped and rattled the earth with rage, perhaps even panic. If this carries on, the pink snake will be the one to earn the kill. Hansen was now in a rush. Hansen and the bear battled for their lives against the rampaging elephant. The pink snake might have been nibbling the interior organs of the elephant by now, and if it killed the elephant, Hansen's struggle would have been for nothing. But Hansen had no way to kill it himself. Even if he used Elephant Rex Strike, he had no idea if it'd be effective enough to snap one of the creature's bones. The bone elephant unleashed a horrible power, blasting the big bear away. The elephant shook its head and ran towards the hill while yelping in pain. The cub ran towards the big bear, and they didn't look like they wanted to give it chase. Hansen looked at them both disapprovingly. Then he gritted his teeth and went after the bone elephant by himself. Although the big bear was heavily injured, it could still fight. Furthermore, there was a cub guarding its side. Hansen was still at a huge disadvantage, even if the fight was to proceed with 2 versus 1. Hansen ran across the mountains, following the bone elephant. He wondered what the pink snake might have done inside its body to drive it to such insanity. Hansen saw that the bone elephant was bleeding from all 7 orifices. It was quite frightening, and Hansen imagined what a terrifying enemy the pink snake would be. If it drilled into his own ear, he couldn't imagine the wretched pain that would follow. Just thinking about it made him shudder in phantom pain as a chill ran down his spine. Earlier, the pink snake had appeared behind Hansen out of nowhere. Just thinking about that, Hansen broke out in a cold sweat. The trail they followed was blocked by a cliffside wall, but the bone elephant did not stop. Boom! The cliffside wall started to collapse as the elephant charged against it ceaselessly. Broken rocks fell atop the elephant, but it did not care. Over and over, it kept bashing the wall with its head. It looked as if it was ready to shatter its brain against the stone. The bone elephant brought up its trunk, and it punched its own head repeatedly. The skull of the elephant almost looked ready to break open. Hansen was getting goosebumps just watching the scene. He swore he would never again let a snake get close to him, small snakes in particular. For this wretched demise to be dished out to a super creature of such Goliath power was incredible, and Hansen didn't think his own body would have lasted half as long. The bone elephant continued carving a new valley through the cliffside, and as the lands around shook, the elephant looked almost pitiful. Hansen kept his distance while he watched the scene unfold. The bone elephant was too strong, and he imagined that the pink snake was still biting a critical organ, fueling its madness further and further. It looked as if its demise was near. It wept bloody tears as the light inside its eyes faded. Its brain had now most likely been ravaged by the pink snake. Blood cascaded from its mouth and ears with little restraint, like a tap. It was sure to die any second now, in the hopeless, twitching mound it had collapsed into. Hansen's heart then began to beat with speed. The bone elephant had driven its head into the cliffside many times, but its skull didn't shatter after all. This most likely meant that Hansen could not get an easy kill, but he had to do something. Even if he used Elephant Rex Strike, there was no guarantee he could split the skull in 2. This made the final hit seem pretty much secured by the pink snake. Hansen cast his senses to scan the bone elephant, its head in particular. His hands gleamed as he gathered frightening strength. The Dongshuan Sutra simulated the bone elephant's flow of energy. His whole body was replicating the bone elephant's persona, thrumming with power like a living scream. His hands were illuminated with a most terrifying power. Hansen did not summon the flaming Rex Strike, however. It would have been useless for him to try to crack the skull now. He only had one chance, and he had to secure a one-hit kill on the elephant. If the Elephant Rex Strike did not work, there would be no second chance. Hansen chose to use his hands to cast the Elephant Rex Strike, because he was opting to use his Yin-Yang Blast and drive that power directly into the elephant's brain. He wasn't going to rush this, however. He couldn't afford to screw up his one chance. He needed to watch carefully and unleash his attack in the final second before the creature's death. At the same time, Hansen sensed the pink snake's location in the elephant's brain. He hoped that this hit could also deal significant damage, or perhaps even death, to the pink snake at the same time. If great damage was dealt, it would at least buy Hansen some time to escape with the goodies. If he couldn't strike both creatures at the same time, Hansen was certain the snake would not let him go. Plus, he'd be weak. Suddenly, Hansen's pupils shrunk. His body burst with power like a raging scream. He struck the bone elephant's head with his fiery palms. Pang! The powerful Elephant Rex Strike was sent directly into the elephant's brain. It was like a torpedo in the deep sea, detonating the brain from the inside. Super creature hunted, Saint Bone Elephant. The beast's soul has not been acquired. Consume its flesh to obtain a random numeric amount of super geno points, ranging from 0 to 10. You may also collect the life geno essence. As the announcement played in Han Sen's head, the pink snake launched out of the dead elephant's ear. It was like a star falling into the forest. It disappeared. Han Sen saw traces of pink blood sprayed across the floor, so it looked like his palm had dealt it some decent damage. He was overjoyed, because his fitness was not as high as it could be. The elephant Rex strike was only enough to mop up an easy kill. It wasn't strong enough to kill a super creature at full health. But Han Sen had damaged the thin pink snake, which prompted it to fly away. It was fairly obvious that the snake was heavily damaged. Perhaps it had already been injured during the scramble to get into the elephant's brain, or being in there the entire time. Regardless, it seemed to have run off for good. After all, the bone elephant was a second-generation super creature. Even if it did drill inside its body, the pink snake must have exhausted a lot of effort and strength to do so. Han Sen was just glad that the pink snake was spooked. The snake must have had no idea such a strike was coming. Only being able to perform such a strike once, it was fortunate the hit was as effective as it was. Han Sen quickly summoned his angel. He wanted to see if she'd eat the bone elephant, for perhaps this would be what it needed to evolve. Han Sen did not take the retrieval of beast souls as seriously as he used to. Obtaining them was no longer as important to him. His biggest priority lately was figuring out how he could consume the life geno essences. Angel saw the body of the Saint Bone Elephant, and when she saw it, her eyes glowed red. With a ravenous appetite, she leapt onto it. She grabbed its bones and began munching on them with a rabid hunger, the sounds of snapping cartilage ringing through the air. Snap, 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 she broke the bones, sucked on the marrow, and crunched on the tusks like glass. Han Sen was frozen. He thought that the angel's teeth were a bit too hard. Watching her nibble her way through a mound of super creature bones was a little frightening. Han Sen summoned his flaming Rex spike and hit the elephant's skull with it, hoping to crack it open and obtain the life geno essence. That was all he personally needed, nothing else mattered to him. But surprisingly for Han Sen, the bones were not as hard as he expected. It seemed that after the bone elephant's death, the bones softened somewhat. The Rex spike broke the top of the skull open like a pinata, letting out the run of white, creamy brain juice. Han Sen was rather shocked, but at least he understood how the angel was able to eat it so ferociously. After death, the elephant's bones really weren't all that hard. Han Sen was so happy, but during this happiness, he heard a sound from all around him. A sea of snakes were slithering towards him. It looked like the pink snake was not too fond of Han Sen's theft, and it seemed as if it had rallied its brethren to kill him. The pink snake was riding the back of another snake. This mount snake was a large Titan boa. The pink snake was hissing at Han Sen with obvious anger and frustration. Han Sen felt bad, seeing the angel munch upon the bone elephant. It would probably take a long time for her to eat it all. But with Han Sen's current weakness, if the snakes attacked, he'd have no hope of repelling them all. He considered whether or not he should quickly grab the angel and escape, leaving behind the bone elephant's flesh in the process. But suddenly, he heard a bear roar. Looking to the top of the hill, he saw two bears, one big and one small, roaring in his direction. They rushed down the hill towards him, tearing up the legions of snakes in the process. Nothing could withstand their rabid claws. They stopped near the body of the bone elephant. Not entirely sure what was going on, Han Sen thought he should summon his wings and fly away. But the big black bear seemed really human. It nodded to Han Sen. And then the bear turned around and roared at the pink snake. The pink snake hissed in response. They both groaned and made noises to each other, staring one another down. After a while of this, the pink snake gave Han Sen one last jealous look before turning around and leaving alongside the rest of its snakes. The tide of snakes washed away. The big bear then roared to Han Sen. It picked up the cub, put it back on its back, and returned to the woods. Han Sen was shocked, not entirely sure what had just happened. How and why would the two bears come all the way over here just to repel the snakes that had threatened him? Did they think the reason I fought the bone elephant was because I wanted to help them? Was this them returning the favor? Han Sen didn't know for sure, but this was what he hypothesized. But regardless of why it had happened, it was a good thing. He had already decided to fly away with the angel and escape. This unexpected turn of events allowed the angel to munch on the elephant in its entirety. Han Sen sat on the floor and rested, observing the surrounding area. He wasn't simply taking in the view, though. He wanted to make sure the snake was gone for good and didn't plan on backstabbing Han Sen by coming back once the bear had left. But Han Sen was just being paranoid, and the pink snake made no plan to return. The super creatures of the second god's sanctuary are so human, the children especially so. They are appearing more and more intelligent every time I see them. What will things be like when I reach the third god's sanctuary? Han-sen was in deep thought as he tossed the bone elephant's essence in his hand. It was a curious thing, like a fusion of bone and jade. But it was slightly transparent, too. This life Geno essence did not look violent and red, and it was a whole lot more like the peaceful bone elephant he had once witnessed sitting beneath a tree, meditating. It wasn't at all representative of the ordinary bone elephant he was used to seeing. I hope I can eat it this time. If I can't, I'm really out of solutions for how I might collect the super Geno points I need. Han-sen gave the life Geno essence a good lick. The result was disappointing. The life Geno essence did not change. It was still as solid as ever, it did not melt, and it continued to look like bone. Han-sen held onto the bone life Geno essence and then used the Dongshuan Sutra to simulate the bone elephant's flow. That thundering power rumbled across the insides of his body. Suddenly, he felt the life Geno essence in his hands begin to follow the flow of the energy inside him. A rhythmic beat developed, and it followed every note and jump of the energy. This made Han-sen very happy, and he knew he had stumbled onto the correct path. He sped up the elephant's flow of energy, which made the life Geno essence shake even more. Han-sen could feel the bone elephant's life Geno essence provide him with a strange, foreign power. It seemed as if it was going to follow Han-sen's own energy and burst out. Han-sen simulated the bone elephant's energy flow again, but the energy inside the life Geno essence did not burst out. He stuck his tongue out and licked the life Geno essence again, but it did not melt. If I can activate the life Geno essence, why can I not eat it? Han-sen frowned, but Han-sen knew he was on the right path, and progress was being made. Otherwise, why would it have become active the way it did? He simply could not observe it because his simulation of the elephant was not powerful enough. After all, his Dongshuan Sutra had not yet broken the first tier. It could not simulate things one-to-one, and there were a few minor differences from the original creature. It looks like I need to finish up my first tier of the Dongshuan Sutra. If this is the way it has to be, then that means I have to absorb the second or third generation life Geno essences of super creatures. And before I kill them, I must have an understanding of their energy flow. If I don't get a grasp of that, there's no point in killing them. And to kill a first-generation creature, well, that would be even more pointless. Han-sen furrowed his brow. Although the first-generation life Geno essences must possess another method of absorption, Han-sen had already had one breakthrough for the day. For now, he would focus on what he had just figured out before working on the next conundrum. Should I kill the silver fox and eat his flesh? That guy is definitely a second-generation super creature. Han-sen wore an evil smile. But it was just a thought, nothing more. There were many second-generation super creatures out there in the second god's sanctuary, just waiting to be found. It would not be necessary for him to kill the silver fox, and as the fox had been a diligent pet for so long, he'd feel terrible doing that. There was the little black cub, though. But if he wanted to go after that super creature, it'd be 2-on-1. That would be too much for him to handle. Red Pony. Han-sen thought back to the Legion of Pegasi and the wolf pack that aided each other, then quickly dropped that thought as well. 8 small snow turtles. He didn't even need to think about that one. He would be better off taking a suicide pill than going up against a family of super creatures. Han-sen felt chill just thinking about the 9 super creatures there. It looks like I need to get out there and look for more solo second-generation super creatures, Han-sen thought to himself as he stroked his jaw. She's evolving. My super battle pet is born, yay. Fighting super creatures should be much easier from this day onwards. Han-sen was beaming with delight. A few days passed and the angel had already evolved. When it wasn't in battle mode, it didn't look different, it was still the black-haired lowly. But when her battle mode was engaged, she was totally different. She had blonde wavy hair, and she wore armor that looked like jade. Even her wings looked jade. The Adorade looked really holy, and it was difficult to look her in the eye. The strange thing was that the Adorade wielded a transparent greatsword. It was similar to the one that Han-sen first saw her use when they met on the Mystery Island. The only difference was that this looked far stronger. A pet beast soul can end up looking like this. Han-sen wondered, in awe. This was the first time he had ever seen something like this. Han-sen soon realized, however, that the greatsword was not simple like a gear item. A piece of gear could not be put inside the Sea of Soul, and the greatsword disappeared when the Adorade exited her battle mode. It was not some ordinary gear. Seeing the Adorade in her battle mode, like some glorious Valkyrie, Han-sen was ecstatic. The mere presence of the Adiraid was intimidating enough for others. Its strength could not be any less than a super creature's, either, that was for sure. "You are finally here," Han Sen said, with tears in his eyes. He wanted to kiss the Adiraid. With the Adiraid by his side, he no longer had to fear super creatures. He could enter battle with them, guns a-blazing, without a care in the world. Han Sen was sitting on a hill while he practiced the Dongshuan Sutra. He had practiced half a cycle when his eyebrows jumped up with the sudden sensation of approaching danger. But Han Sen did not panic, so he maintained his practice of the Dongshuan Sutra, even as 12 people encircled him. Huang Yunlong and Cheng Yuling had exerted a lot of effort in the formulation and execution of their plan of assassination. They thought they'd need to commit to a big fight if they were going to surround Han Sen. But they were able to walk right up to him, all while he remained sitting and basking in the red morning light. Huang Yunlong and Cheng Yuling were almost unable to believe how smoothly their operation seemed to be going. They thought an elite like Han Sen would detect them from 100 meters away, and the fact that he did not run away surprised them even more. "Han Sen, we meet at last." With everything going so smoothly, Huang Yunlong was pleased. Han Sen ignored him. He was finishing his big cycle of the Dongshuan Sutra. When it was done, he opened his eyes to see a dozen people surrounding him, one of which was Huang Yunlong. "Who are you?" Han Sen observed everyone and ended up on Huang Yunlong. He asked the question as he stood up. "I am from the Cloud Dragon Shelter in the north. I am Huang Yunlong." Huang Yunlong proudly introduced himself. "What do the northern folks want from me, then?" Han Sen asked calmly. "Oh, nothing big. I am just requesting that I purchase your life Geno Essence," Huang Yunlong said, smiling. "How much are you willing to pay?" Han Sen responded. "How much?" Cheng Yuling almost burst out laughing. He thought Han Sen must have been retarded to ask such a question in the situation he was in. "That much." Cheng Yuling pulled out his wallet and threw a small 10,000 note at Han Sen's face, laughing. He would have liked to throw out an even smaller note, but as wealthy as he was, that was the smallest he had. "No, it's worth more than that," Han Sen calmly replied, with no deviation in his emotion. He was not mad at all. He didn't dare announce he had gotten Super Geno points before, because he knew others would come after him. Now that the cat was out of the bag, it hadn't been long before someone sought to bring him harm, all for retrieving the life Geno essence he owned. The formation was fairly big. There were a dozen people, each with an imposing, intimidating presence. They weren't ordinary evolvers. If he was able to bring that many strong fighters to battle Han Sen, he had to be a man that possessed a lot of power. The worth of the item is not up to you to decide. If I want to buy it off you, you will have to sell it and accept the price that I propose. Huang Yunlong looked callous. He didn't say much else. He then simply gestured with his hand, signaling for a dozen fighters to unlock their gene locks and run towards Han Sen. Without aid from the big families and prominent alliance organizations, it was difficult to gather a dozen elites with unlocked gene locks. In the past, Han Sen would have believed it difficult to fight these assaulters. After all, he only had 2 fists. Being surrounded by a dozen elites with unlocked gene locks, getting out alive would be difficult. But now things were different. Now, he had his battle Adiraid. Super pets had the potential to be as strong as super creatures. No matter how strong these elites were, if they could not kill a super creature, they could not kill an Adiraid. Seeing that these cruel people wanted to murder him, Han Sen did not respond any further. All he did was summon his Adiraid. Huang Yunlong saw the Adiraid and was shocked. They thought Han Sen was only summoning a spirit, as humanoid pets were very rare. They never expected this, but they did not understand why Han Sen was summoning a spirit. If it was a royal spirit, it was nothing to them. Even spirits could not fight that many talented fighters. It wouldn't last a second. If Han Sen was using a spirit to buy himself time to escape, he was too naive. Huang Yunlong had done his best to hide his people's presence, but when they entered Lu Hui's territory, they did not go unnoticed. Lu Hui was intelligent enough to determine what they had come for. It had to be something as valuable as Han Sen's life Geno essence, for Huang Yunlong to risk everything. Lu Hui knew Han Sen was currently in his territory, but he wasn't in a rush to meet and greet with him. He knew that for people like Han Sen, such gestures meant very little. Actions spoke louder than words. People were at their most appreciative when they were desperate. Lu Hui planned to wait until Han Sen found himself surrounded by Huang Yunlongs, then spring an attack that would save his life. Such a bold action would be far more cherished and appreciated than if he were to simply tip Han Sen off to a coming assassination attempt. Lu Hui and his people lay in wait in a nearby forest. When he saw Huang Yunlong had brought a dozen evolvers with unlocked gene locks to murder Han Sen, he was shocked. He had brought a terrible power, and Lu Hui imagined that Huang Yunlong must have emptied the entire strength of his territory to fell Han Sen. He was so desperate, he was willing to risk everything to obtain the life Geno essence. Lu Hui furrowed his brows and took a look around him, pondering whether or not he had brought enough people. Just as Lu Hui was planning to run to Han Sen's side and defend him, he saw he had summoned an Adderade. When Lei Hengwu laid his eyes upon it, he was taken aback. With much surprise, he said, "No way he will use that spirit to beat them, right?" The next second, the Adderade moved. As the dozen warriors sought to attack, the Adderade flapped her wings and took off into the air. She flew to the man who was nearest and attacked with her transparent greatsword. The man was wielding a great lance, and his body was heating up, emitting a white fog. He was an evolver who could control the element of heat, but the Adderade was too fast, and she frightened him. He held up his lance to block her attack. The Adderade looked cold, like a goddess that was pure and free from even the smallest speck of dust. She brought down her fierce greatsword. The man and the lance were both cut in half by the ferocious greatsword. Blood and organs fell all about, but not a single droplet touched the Adderade. Under the morning light, the Adderade still looked the same. As evil as she appeared and acted, she seemed to be graced with a holy, angelic look, too. In that brief moment, every other evolver was suddenly petrified. Huang Yunlong, Cheng Yulan, Lu Hui, and Lei Hengwu were frozen stiff. No one expected an elite, who had unlocked their gene lock, to be killed in such a grisly fashion. It happened so unexpectedly, it gave them all the heebie-jeebies. A second later, the Adderade flapped her wings again. Her beautiful body soared through the air and teleported before another fighter. She weaved her greatsword up, effortlessly. The fighter was clad in heavy armor, and he bore a great shield. When he saw the Adderade's sword coming for him, he yelled and raised his bulwark to deflect the attack. The thick great shield was hewn in half, and the gentle wind caressed the evolver's head on its ascent and subsequent descent, free from the shoulders it once belonged to. Impossible. Huang Yunlong's eyes opened wide. His face was distorted with horrific surprise, and fear crept into his heart to lay its first tangling, choking roots. The man who used the shield was called Dooku. He had a skill called Platinum Body. When he opened his gene lock, his body would harden like platinum. With sacred blood armor and shield, his defense was unmatched. He was one of the strongest amongst the evolvers, yet he had been beheaded in less than a moment's notice. Even his armor and shield had been reduced to splinters, much to the fright of everyone who witnessed it. Cheng Yuling and the others all knew how powerful Dooku was. After seeing such a person be slain so easily, the fear that was beginning to grip the hearts of everyone accelerated. No one could believe Dooku had been killed in such a fashion, and even Lu Hui and Lei Hengwu were in as much shock and awe as those who now had to face the wrath of the Adderade. Powerful spirits did exist, but rarely did humans get the chance to see them. They had never seen spirits swear vows, either. No one expected Han Sen to be in possession of a spirit as terrifying as that. Retreat, retreat. Huang Yunlong did not wait any longer as he turned around and sought to flee. The thing that looked like an angel was far stronger than he expected it to be. It was scarier than a super creature, and his chance of killing Han Sen had quickly dropped to zero. Before Huang Yunlong barked his order, however, everyone had already started running. They all wished that they could grow more legs so they could skitter away with greater ease. They were lucky to be alive, facing such a fearsome creature. Han Sen could use his mind to control the Adderade. She flapped her wings and caught up with Cheng Yuling. His face drained of its color entirely, and he regretted the way he had mocked Han Sen. Cheng Yuling's body burst with power and he tried to evade the Adderade's strike. It was to no avail, however. It was sliced in two. Before his death, all he could do was whimper. There was no death cry or final words. Han Sen had taken away those rights. The Adderade angel did not stop there, however. Under Han Sen's command, she went after Huang Yunlong. Han Sen did not care who he was. He did not care about his family or background. Han Sen wanted to send a message to everyone in the Alliance. He wanted to tell them all that if they messed with him, they would end up dying gruesome deaths. Huang Yunlong was the North's champion and top human evolver. Not even Han Sen could beat him easily. But before the Adderade, his persona had shriveled to that of a fleeing scoundrel. The Adderade caught up with him easily. A few cuts and slices removed his armor. Then, his helmet was removed, which came terrifyingly close to taking his scalp off along with it. Han Sen, I have no grudge with you. If you let me go now, I'll appreciate it. If you don't let me go, my blood legion will most likely avenge me. Huang Yunlong, in between his evasions and pleas, screamed and yelped as he tried to escape. Han Sen frowned, as he had heard about the Blood Legion before. When humans first entered their interstellar era, they experienced many unique events and encountered a variety of different species. It provided a great expansion to humanity's understanding of life and their own existence. This also led to the forming of different religions and dogmas. The Blood Legion was one of those religious organizations. Hansen had heard that the Blood Legion was responsible for one of the Alliance's greatest events. It took lethal force to suppress them, and they were branded a cult. They were supposedly wiped out without a trace. But in the past 100 years, the Blood Legion's popularity had been on the rise once more. A lot of people had been contacted by missionaries of the supposed Blood Legion in a recruitment spree. Their activities had been viewed negatively, and over the past few years of their resurgence, many people had died for their allegiance to the cult. Hansen did not expect Huang Yunlong to have ties with the Blood Legion, but that did not change anything. No matter who he was, Hansen had to end him. If he didn't cut the head off this snake, people would assume Hansen was soft, and others might try their hand at coming after him as well. Hansen decided to live like a man. Huang Yunlong was responsible for the events of the day. He wanted Huang Yunlong's death to warn others who might one day seek to do the same. Huang Yunlong shouted, but Hansen did not care. He just coldly watched as the Adderade sliced him, cutting him down bit by bit. Huang Yunlong was quite the elite, and after 30 slashes, he had yet to fall. Even Hansen was not much stronger than him. But facing the Adderade, Huang Yunlong had no chance. Death would be the only resolution to his encounter with it. His wounds slowed him down, and what happened next was inevitable. His head was lopped off. He didn't even have the time to close his eyes before he was beheaded. His open eyes spoke to the way he felt in the final moments before his death. He was angry, and he did not feel that what was happening to him was fair. Lu Hui and Lei Hengwu were frozen as they watched. The Northern Master, Huang Yunlong, who had reigned the North for 60 years, was cut down just like that. And the dozen evolvers who had opened their gene locks were fought off by an angel-looking creature under the command of Hansen. Only 6 managed to escape her wrath. Hansen did not even have to dirty his hands. The angel-looking creature had delivered the frightening results he desired on his behalf. "Let's go." Lu Hui commanded his people to leave. He was worried that if they remained there, Hansen might misunderstand the meaning of their presence. If Hansen believed they were with Huang Yunlong, they wouldn't end up any better. The angel-looking creature was far too scary. For the people that had run off a great distance, Hansen did not command the Adderade to follow. He then looked in Lu Hui's direction. After that, he went to scavenge and see what he might find on the ghastly remains of those who had been slain. Nothing. Most of them had a little coin pouch with some money and their cards inside, but that was it. Hansen had a look at Huang Yunlong and Cheng Yulang's cards. In between them, he saw the symbol of the 9-life cat. Blood Legion. Is there any connection between it and the 9-life cat? Hansen's facial expression was complicated, unsure whether or not this was just a coincidence. But Hansen had never heard of the Blood Legion making use of the 9-life cat as some form of symbol. He did remember that the Blood Legion believed in the blood god, however. It was a god that could control the blood power of creatures. Aside from Huang Yunlong and Cheng Yulang, none of the others had the same card. Hansen then set up a pyre. After burning all the corpses, he left. The battle in which Huang Yunlong had been killed in his attempt to assassinate Hansen shocked the whole alliance. Because of the life geno essence, many people had kept their eye on Hansen. No one had expected Huang Yunlong would have been the first to try to take it. A lot of other factions felt relieved. Many had made plans to do the same as Huang Yunlong did, and they were glad that he had attempted such a thing first. If they went, they'd only have traded places and been the ones who were killed instead. After Hansen returned, he contacted Jai Yanren. He told her she could be in charge of the Frosty Bear Life Geno Essence. He had been unable to absorb the Life Geno Essence so far, so it was pointless for him to keep it right now. Particularly since all it did was draw the jealousy and ire of others. If Hansen gave it to the Jai family, people would know that he could not absorb the life geno essence, and it would hopefully prevent them from bothering him. He wasn't afraid of fighting, but assassination attempts were difficult to avoid. In the Alliance, he was not invincible. There was no point in being killed for an item that was worthless to him. Hansen did want to know if there was any way to absorb the life geno essence, however. With his own knowledge and wealth, his ability to perform tests and experiments was limited. Therefore, providing it to the Jai family was the best course of action. He thought about selling the first-generation life geno essences he could not absorb to others. Such items would most likely be useless to them as well, but at least he'd earn a lot of cash. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss the next chapter.